Hey guys, welcome to La Bella Vita. I am Dana Giacovello, your host and founder of Bullies Keep Out. Today we are here with Anna Labor, who some of you may have read her story and remember her from the Bullies Keep Out site, where she had shared a little bit of her story of bullying and finding the courage to fight and overcome from a very unexpected source. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about that. Thank you for being on today, Anna.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's start off with this. Like I said, I know you shared your story on our site, and it was got a great response. A lot of people loved it, and they pulled a lot of inspiration from it. Tell me a little bit more about your situation and that unexpected source that you found the courage to overcome your situation.
Well, like most kids growing up, I was always picked on from since I could remember from early elementary. It wasn't until about seventh grade, I don't know the exact time frame, but towards the beginning where I became best friends with this girl in history class, and one of her other friends, I guess, grew a jealousy of it. I didn't know this girl. I knew who she was, but I wasn't friends with her by any means. But she decided one day to start a rumor about us that we were lesbians. And I didn't even know the rumor even was a rumor until, it's like my life changed. I went home one day from school, enjoying school. The next day, it was like everything just completely stopped. In the beginning, it wasn't as rough because I was just trying to clear up the rumor, trying to put some truth to it, but eventually people just overtook. In the hallways, it was the scariest place for me because I didn't know if my life would eventually become in danger physically. I was called every name in the book, like you're a dyke, lesbian, all these awful names that no kid should ever have to hear. And when you're at that age, your brain's still developing, you're still trying to get to know yourself, and here are these horrible words being thrown at you. There was a girl that handed me a note one time during science class and said, your parents must be ashamed of you that you're their child. You should just go die. And that was awful.
Right. I can imagine. It sounds you went through a pretty bad ordeal, and this was. Well, I'm sorry. This was in high school.
Where I was, 7th and 8th grade was considered a middle school.
That was okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. It was for me too. Now, did it carry over into years later, or was it just secluded to middle school?
I would say the worst part was middle school. It kind of carried over, but by the time I was in 9th grade, I was just not me. I was numb. I was tired of feeling. And it still carried on a little bit. People would still make comments in the hallways and stuff. And it was still a rough patch for high school, but it was more of my anger and my hatred almost towards everyone because of how they made me feel. So it was a lot of struggling.
So it was almost kind of like sometimes we build like almost a little self-destructive path of ourselves when it comes to anger. That's like, it's a normal emotion, but it can also be, in my opinion, and from what I've heard from other people too, a dangerous emotion at times when we don't let go of it. It's okay to be angry, but then we have to let go of it at some point and move on and forgive. And I learned that a long time ago myself. As kids, we always get angry and then you hate, and you don't really know which other way to go when people are tormenting you. Now, I know in your story you also shared that you kind of felt funny mentioning where you got your courage from and you found your strength. And you know what? I remember telling you it's not so abnormal because I hear it all the time. It's all over my timeline from tons of people who they look up to, who they admire. And, people think it's silly, I got motivation from a show or an actress or something, or an actor or something I watched. And I pull my inspiration from all over the place. There's all types of sources, and that includes entertainment. I mean, that's part of what entertainment is, I feel. I think that a lot of people think that it's just acting, but I don't really feel that people understand the effect and the impact that they could have on a lot of young people and a lot of young minds. Like I said, I get when I mentor and I talk to people, I hear it all the time. Um, and I get requests all the time. So tell me a little bit about your the person that helped you get through some rough times.
Well, I didn't never dealt with my pain head on until I was an adult. And that's when Bellamy Young came into the picture. In 2012, Scandal started, so being a fan of Shonda Rhimes, Grey's Anatomy, Private Practice, I was like, well, I'm going to give this one a shot. I had no idea what was about to unfold. And it was very slow with Mellie because she wasn't really in season 1 very much. You really got to know her in season 2. So that's really when it started. I connected to Mellie's anger. I connected to her feeling coming off as cold, but deep down it was a person in pain, a person who was crying out for help, and that's how I felt. So I connected to Mellie, and with that connection, it inspired me to look up Bellamy Young. And with Bellamy Young, with interviews that came out over time, it was like her wisdom with her own pain, with losing her father and stepdads in her life, and how she dealt with that pain with grace and kindness. It inspired me to do the same. And she also had said a quote, you have to welcome the pain like you welcome joy. And it makes sense, because you can't have a life without either of the two. You have to have both of them. And that was like a message to me. You need to open up your heart, feel the pain, let it go, and then move on. And it's been a process, and it's not much of a process now. I think I'm finally past the pain, but now it's more, I want to help now, because I don't want someone else going through what I went through.
Absolutely, and I think that's great when we have to speak out and stand up and share our stories, whether they're negative and positive. People think you can only share negative stories. I always tell them, no, you could share positive ones too, because we have to have that balance and see both sides. If somebody had a good story of coming out where they might have not gotten bullied, I think people want to hear it, and they should hear it, that it's not always bad, and to not always fear it, regardless of the situation. Obviously, with bullying, there is no, it doesn't begin as positive, obviously, but sometimes I have spoken to people that have positive stories of, such as coming out, where they didn't have the bullying situation, they had tons of support, and they were questioning whether they should share the story if it would help anybody, and I'm like, of course it will. And, you mentioned Scandal, and it's funny, like, people probably think, oh, oh, you got motivation from Scandal, looking at the storyline, considering what it's about.
It's crazy shiny. Even like Mellie, people are like, you connect to Mellie? I'm like, okay, well, we have 2 totally different stories. Let me make that clear. Yeah, it's very different. I have it was a natural thing that happened to me. I have no idea why it had to be Scandal. I mean, it's funny when I say that to people, and they're like, oh, okay. Sorry.
Well, if they've never seen the show, they probably think, oh, okay, well, there's lots of shows out there that are very popular for that. And I think what it is more than the premise of the show is how the character is played, and by the person that portrays it, how they come across on screen, and more of their inner emotions about playing the character, and not so much the fantasy aspect of it, or, the more realistic aspect of it, of them being a real person, because even though they're acting, strong acting can come across as just so powerful for people. And like I said, I see it all the time. So it's definitely not something I would ever, feel funny talking about it. Everyone's going to have a different reaction to it.
Right, yeah.
And, the point is that if wherever you find it, I think that's what stands out, and that's what's important. Not always so much the exact source, but I know you spoke very highly of her and how she helped you in your story. Now I know you met her, didn't you, at one point?
Yeah, back in March at Paley Fest, I met her. It was probably 20 seconds.
It was a cute picture. Were you able to tell her anything about it, or no?
It was such a crazy, because it's a fan event. So I was surrounded by other people who flew in for this. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to stand here for 10 minutes and tell her my life story. and take away a moment for someone else.
Right.
You know, I figured maybe eventually we'll have our moment where I can tell her in person, which is my dream, but we'll see if that happens. But
Never know.
yeah, I met her, but just hugging her, I felt like was like, you know, like, wow, okay, this is pretty great.
No, I think that happens with anybody that we admire and look up to. When you actually get to see that person, it doesn't really matter that you can't, like, okay, I want to tell you my whole life story. You know, I don't think that matters. I think it's just sometimes you just get that, you get kind of overwhelmed by emotions just by saying hello or making eye contact or, like you said, giving them a hug, which is, personal touch and hugging is also another very powerful thing between people, affection. And so I think that's wonderful that you were able to find something. I don't think it matters what we find or where you get it. I think what's important is that you found that courage and strength to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and it's a healing process.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. It's not overnight. It doesn't matter how much someone, you admire and how much they help you. It's not an overnight process, and a lot of people think it is. But what is something that, as far as I know you said you want to help and give back now, what is something that you would tell to people that came to you for advice, whether it was a friend or if you were just speaking to someone in passing, that words of wisdom, I guess, of what you've been through, what would you say?
Well, for me, when I was young, going through it, what kept me going was my hopes and dreams for my career, which was to be in the art field, graphic design, whatever. So I think hanging on to that and proving that I could be somebody, even with what these people were telling me, was my motivation. So I think if someone were to come to me asking for advice, it'd be like, have your hopes and dreams and hang on to them and just keep going, because happiness to me is the best revenge towards your bullies. I think that's the best way to get back at them, is to be happy, to have a nice life, fulfill your life, have a career that you're happy with, or anything that makes you happy. It doesn't have to be your career, but find something that brings you a source of happiness or hope and hang on to that and just keep going. It does get better. It's not overnight, like you said. It's a long process, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
Right. There's always a light.
Yeah.
Now, besides Bellamy, did you have a support system at home within friends or your family? Did you tell them? Was it something you were scared to talk about at first? I mean, how did your inner circle work out as far as the situation?
Well, I came from a very loving home. My parents and my brother and I were very tight-knit, and I think that helped a lot, too. My parents didn't know everything that was happening. I actually didn't tell them everything until I was an adult, and they were just like, why didn't you tell us? But I think it was fear, but when I was in school, that was before social media. So when I got home, I was home. I didn't want to relive the day, hash it out with my parents, and my mom she's a mama bear. I didn't know what she was going to do. So, there was a few times where she did confront bullies. If she saw it happening, she did go up to them and confront them. But I would say just being close to them is what helped me get through the days and stuff. So hopefully when other people are being bullied, they have that support system at home or with friends. With friends, I couldn't really rely on, so I didn't trust anyone. So it was just my parents and my brother that helped out.
Now, do you agree, some people have different takes on it. Do you agree that you have to have more than just people that you admire on social media or from the, entertainment, television shows, or whoever it might be that you might not personally know, that you have to have that real life support, and you have to get help? I know sometimes people kind of just look straight and look to one source, and they don't outsource their options to get help from all different types of places. I mean, do you kind of feel, being someone who's bullied, do you agree with that? That's, you kind of need to pull from everywhere to get support, and rather than just focusing on one aspect or person or...
have to really find, and I think there's a bunch of things that could help you heal and move on and deal with your pain. I mean, Bellamy was a big part of it, but there was a bunch of other stuff all combined that helped out. So it wasn't like just her, that was miserable this whole time. She came in and made me happy. It was just like, there was a bunch of little things. She's a big part of it, but there was a lot of movies, books, TV shows. A lot of it was like visual entertainment because that's how I am. I'm a very visual person. So I think that's really where my comfort source came from, along with my parents and brother.
Well, there's a lot of inspiration and motivation that comes from, like I said earlier, the entertainment field and movies and books, and especially geared towards bullying, cyberbullying, and, hate and all those causes and subjects and important topics that we should be discussing all the time. Now, on social media, obviously you're on social media. Have you run into any issues on social media as an adult? Or anywhere?
I haven't. I've witnessed a few things. I haven't been victim of it. There was a time where a friend of mine I felt was being bullied online, and I tried to comfort her the best. We were texting back and forth, talking to each other, just being my best to be a comfort to her rather than instigating even more online with the bullying. I just wanted to be there for her to talk to and stuff. So I haven't really fallen victim. I haven't seen too much. I know with a fandom you have so much of that. I tend to kind of ignore that, so I can keep my experience a positive one. But there was just that one experience with a friend of mine that went through that, and I did my best to be there for her regardless of why people were being mean to her. It wasn't regardless of whether I agreed with it or not. I was just wanted to be there for her because I didn't want someone to feel like an outcast or that they weren't worth anything, because that's the worst thing you can ever do to someone, regardless of what they've done.
You're speaking from experience, too, so... one final thing I want to discuss with you real quick is when you were in school, and I kind of feel this is a very important thing to ask people having gone through it in the school. Did you feel that the school really did anything or did much, or do you feel that the schools are really failing when it comes to bullying?
When I was in school, I did my best to, they always say go tell a teacher, and they say that even today. When I would go tell a teacher, they would brush it off, just ignore it, walk away. I had one teacher saying, well, maybe they're picking on you because they want to be your friend. I'm like, I don't know where you get that analogy, why someone's going to make me feel like crap because they want to be my friend. So no, I never really had that support from teachers or faculty and stuff. And when you don't feel like you have anyone fighting for you, you just tend to not tell anyone. Because what's the point if they're just going to brush you off as if it's just kids being kids is what they say. And that's not what it is at all.
Yeah, I know a lot of people feel that the schools are really kind of not on point with enough prevention and intervention, and there's a lot of controversy of side taking and even socioeconomic status, and I just read a story about that recently, and there's just so much involved in it. But it's more than the schools, it's the parents, it's the families. They all have to kind of work in conjunction together, and I don't see a lot of that because I keep hearing stories every day, and a lot of them have to do with schools and even adults, even when they're in college, or even adults who go, older adults who go back to school. I've heard issues of bullying, but like I said, there's no limitations on it. I really appreciate you sharing your story and telling us a little bit more about what happened to you. Hopefully everybody got something out of this and it'll make them want to share their story and speak out. Your Twitter is at
Anna_banana87. I always have to think of it.
Anna Banana, I should have remembered that. You guys can talk with Anna on Twitter, and she follows BKO, and we chat with her often. You can contact me on the site, www.bullieskeepout.com, or any of our social media sites, and Twitter, Facebook. We're all over social media. Feel free to email me, share your story if you want to get involved. And until next time, be kind and love big, guys.